This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to this playoff edition of the Buffalo Cover One Podcast. Aaron, Quinn, how we doing?
I knew this. So bad.
Survive in advance.
So bad.
Survive in advance. Survive in advance. That's all that matters. There's no...
Straight out of the can. Not even room for ice or cups here.
I might have had the biggest exhale of my entire life. We just compared heart rates a moment ago, a full 10 minutes after.
I'm back under 100.
I'm working my way down.
When I sat down, I was at 135, which is about where I exercise.
Yeah, I hit 136 when I first walked in the room.
Yeah. But like I tweeted out right after this. It doesn't matter how. The how is not important. We're going to talk about it. It doesn't matter in this postseason. It's that you advance. And the Buffalo Bills and that monkey from the 1996 playoff loss off their back and won a home playoff game. And that's all that matters. My neighborhood, I could hear screaming in both directions. People are lit right now.
It's, we tried to talk about it. I certainly was hopeful for a little bit more comfortable victory than what we saw here, but there are no bad teams in the AFC playoffs. This proves it more than anything else. We just played another double-digit, 11-win team. They played maybe their best game of the season, if we're being honest. That was a phenomenal game by the Indianapolis Colts. The Bills played a pretty iffy game, to be honest. That was not a great game. Going through that combination and holding on at the end, despite, certainly a questionable call we'll get to, but several others that were close and went the Bills' way. It was, a little rough to kind of keep your bearings. I certainly felt pretty comfortable at one point when the Bills, went up and were holding, almost a 2-touchdown lead at that point. It's something where I don't know that I expected it to need to be Micah Hyde knocking away a Hail Mary attempt at the end of the game. But ultimately, the Bills held on. A great call by Padden here. The Bills didn't play well and just won and beat a good playoff team. And now we move on, and nothing matters beyond that.
It's true. It's the momentum did not carry forward from the season, which I think a lot of us thought might. This game, actually, man, really felt more like how we thought the Colts would play. Inconsistent, lacking for quarters at a time, where that's what we thought we were going to see out of the Colts here, where they would go away for a couple quarters and the Bills would be able to capitalize on it. That didn't happen, and the Colts were able to keep it close. We knew all along this was a really good football team, but I agree with you. I watched a lot of Colts football since that game was decided that we were going to be set up against them, and I don't think they've played a better game. And let's not kid ourselves here. The Bills didn't deserve to win this game by any metric. We'll get into all these numbers. There's no metric that has the Bills winning this game in the end. And my guy Buffalo Wins is probably going to be all over me for the 300 yards that Allen got, but no metric here. The Bills deserve to win. And Indy really had 10 points slip through their hands and bounce off of a field goal post. And that's the difference in this ball game. Michael Pittman comes down with that catch. That's it, guys. It's a wrap. And the Bills didn't stop that play. That he was wide open to make that catch. It was in the game. It's a game of inches. These cliches always pop up. It couldn't be more true.
Yeah, and so, first, our presenting sponsor, Uncle Jumbo's, well needed today. We need that. We'll get to our sponsor, West Her, here in a bit. So the Buffalo Bills have defeated the Indianapolis Colts 27-24 in the first game of the Super Wildcard weekend. I think it's a cheesy name, but I get it. They added on 2 extra games. We've got a triple header today and a triple header tomorrow.
You got to sell it somehow.
Bills fans and Bills Mafia now get to watch the rest of these games, and with at some point your heart will come back down, your heartbeat will settle, and we'll be able to figure out who we're going to play here. If the Browns beat the Steelers late Sunday night, we will play the winner of Baltimore and Tennessee tomorrow. If Pittsburgh wins, we will host the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to be at home either way. Before we dive into some of the details of the game, I thought Bills Mafia was an impact in this game. We saw, for the first time all season, a defender or an opposing team have to struggle to communicate some play calls and some things there. I honestly think it might have had Josh a little jacked up early. He had been killer rolling right all second half of the season. That first throw, he uncorked a good 5 yards over John Brown's head. I don't know if that was just a little adrenaline, would have happened anyways without the fans, but I certainly don't think it's a stretch to say that maybe he was feeling it a little bit there. And then late in the game, I think that it was nice to hear fans as a reaction to the game, and I'm looking forward to it next week. Did you notice it during the game?
Not a ton, to be honest. There was moments where I saw Rivers, whisper, talking to his back right in his ear hole, things like that, more yelling than we've seen, like you said. Some of that's Rivers, too. He's just a loud and obnoxious human being, and that's his style of life. But I think there was some of that. I don't know how much I can say there was an impact. We saw Josh waving them down at one point, which, guys, if you go to football games, please just sit down and when the offense is on the field. Don't talk. Just be as quiet as possible.
Want to talk about smart fans. The Colts were always awesome at that. Back in the Peyton Manning days, crazy loud for Dwight Freeney. Yeah, and then completely silent for Peyton Manning. We're a little out of practice. We've got to get back into that.
I can't tell you how many fans have yelled at it. Like, everybody just sit down. But on the defensive side, I don't know that I can say it was an impact, because the Bills did a pretty good job on defense in the first half. They held them.
Ultimate bend but don't break.
Tons of yards given up. And again, points left by the Colts' own mistakes. They shot themselves in the foot of giving up points. The Bills didn't necessarily stop them when they didn't get those points. So I don't know in some of those bigger situations how much the crowd impacted it. They were still able to, especially even late in that game, they were still moving the ball. Obviously, we'll get into the challenge play, but I don't know that the fans had any impact on that. But I think there was a lot of energy. I would love to have seen the decibel volume when Trey White knocked that ball down on that last drive, because in my house the decibel volume got higher than it should have been. Having a 2-year-old napping, I'll tell you that.
The loudest I've heard my wife cheer all season.
My wife cheers like a treat.
Most into it she's been all year. Really generous guys at Xylicider, our man Eric Buffwagon. Appreciate you guys so generous with everything here. Really appreciate you guys very, very much. Joe, you guys as well. The super chat in the chat here tonight has been amazing. We really appreciate it. I'm going to go with Joe's question here for a second. I will say there was some odd decision making during the game from Reich. They've been a pretty analytically sound team all year. They've been aggressive, not quite to the level that McDermott and the Bills have been, but also the Bills have a better offense. You can afford to be more aggressive when your offense is better. Their combination of things was a little odd. Punted inside Bills territory twice, field goals on some questionable distances to convert, and then the time you do go for it, you're at 4th and goal from the 6. And that was one where, honestly, the analytics were actually in favor of taking the field goal. So just the combination of pressing and making decisions. And at one point, I believe it was 6 drives into Bills territory, and they had 10 points out of it. Now, ultimately, they get back in that game anyways. But this game could have been easily in Indianapolis's control if the Bills defense didn't, that bend but don't break mentality. They didn't come up with plays in those big moments when it happened, and there weren't some maybe questionable calls from Reich, in my opinion.
Yeah, there for sure were some questionable calls. Some of it, now that we're able to sit back and our heart rates are going down, we're able to digest, and hindsight wins out, right? So the 4th and 6 looks terrible since they didn't go for it. And not taking those 3 points. Those 3 points are the difference of this game being in overtime still, and we're missing the show. So some of it, but they had that ball. That ball was inches. So it's hard to say that was a bad call, even though analytics are against it. They could have had the 3 points. They were inches away from that being a touchdown and being something that turns this game in an entirely different manner, because what happened next is the Bills take that and they go score and double dip. So that's the difference in this football game, is the hindsight of that play not working by not even a meter.
Well, and even beyond that, the downside of, our defense has been playing really well, but we're going to trust that they can't go 96 yards in under 2 minutes, and they're going to be able to convert on that. And of course, that's what really built them. And we'll get to that drive in a bit here. That maybe a precursor for drive of the game when we talk about our West Earth segment. But let's dive into the numbers here. Obviously, up until a moment we'll get to here in a second, Josh Allen was phenomenal today. 26 to 35 for 324, puts up 2 touchdowns. His biggest running game in a long time. We have not seen him run this many times or in this many critical spots in a long time. 11 carries for 54 yards. The 26 to 35 is solid. Not, maybe as great as it had been all year, but you're still talking 74%. Up until that crazy sack at the end, this was one of Josh Allen's best games. And I'll say, for Bills fans, you guys are going to hear about this play. Like the people who snipe at, Josh Allen is still sugar high Josh, or can you trust him in a big game, or what they're going to say here, get yourself ready for it, is, nope, this is going to come back to bite him at some point. At some point, they won't be able to overcome this because, look, he doesn't know when to, just take it down and live to fight another day. And I'll say, in that moment, he almost cost us. If that ball comes out and doesn't get recovered by Darrell Williams, you're talking Colts ball with a lot more time left, already in Bills territory. I certainly was frustrated in that moment.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend Josh there at all. Again, like you said, one play out of an otherwise great game.
Yes, it's an amazing game and a critical mistake.
Yeah, and when you have a label like Josh has, you could have the season he's had and all the great work and a great game, and that one play creates a narrative. It doesn't matter. These guys are going to, like you said, the people that want to jump on it, your Nick Wrights, your Ryan Clarks, are going to look at that play, and they're going to talk about it all week. And I really have no defense of it either. I'm not going to get in their mentions and tell them, whoa, but he had a great game, because that play did almost blow this game, even though the fumble was
they
recovered.
wouldn't have been, I get it, they wouldn't have been in the game without how amazing he had been playing. He kept those drives when the Bills were struggling. Absolutely. He kept them in the game, but that stuff still matters.
It matters 100%. And not only the fact that they got the ball back, that was great, but if he just takes the sack there, then they have a chance of getting a first down there and ending the game. They could have ended
second
the game.
Down. Yeah. It was a first down play. It would have been 2nd and 17. Like, that's not the end of the world. You're 2nd and 17 at like the Indy
40 yards on the next play, right? Like,
yeah.
And then they had to press a little bit. They could have gotten some yards. They had a misconnection on the next play. There was a number of drops in this game that we'll have to talk about at some point. But when you're in 2nd and 33, then everybody starts pressing. You're not going to, nobody's going to convert 2nd and 33. And that just took away their chance. They had a really nice drive going. I thought they were going to end the game on that drive, get one more first down. You're in field goal range, take some more time off the clock, put up another field goal, and get out of here. Didn't happen. Josh did the exact opposite of what we all want to do. I don't think any Bills fans should have run in the defense of Josh for that play. We could talk about what a great game he had, but
and deserves credit. But that play wasn't okay. Like, he cannot have those often and again and think we're going to survive as we continue to play better teams as the plays get here.
If those analysts and such bring that up and say, hey, this is going to bite the Bills in the butt, I'm worried about that also. This has been a concern when we talked about the pregame. I was worried about Sugar High Josh. And granted, we didn't get it throughout the game, but we got it in the moment that it mattered the most, that he doesn't take a sack. And not only did he take a sack, took a sack that could have resulted in a fumble. So he needs to, whatever he has to do to get that part in those crunch moments out, or that narrative will never go away.
Yeah. Shifting into the next part, I'm torn in where my frustration should be pointed, because there was a point in that game where they got things a little bit turned around. I get it. Indianapolis has a very good defense. I know players made comments that this is the best defense they played all year. We saw that today. They played very, very well. The Bills put together a couple really good drives, and otherwise, Indy played great. I didn't understand the play calling for the first time. I am as adamant of a Brian Daboll defender as exists. I defend Daboll to the nth degree. there were a couple times where they went back to some of these quarterback runs and a couple running back runs that I'm not sure if they were checks at the line and Indy was just giving Josh a look that he couldn't, turn. That's what they're coaching him to do, that, hey, when you have this look, you need to take it. Or if it was, hey, we had a lead and we're trying to run with it. I don't know. There was a stretch there where it was a little confusing about some of the play calls. Ultimately, the Bills ran the ball 21 times for 96 yards, 4.6 yards per play. Towards the end of the game, they got back into that passing rhythm. Ultimately, it looks like 35-21 passing and rushing. So the run-pass ratio ends up being pretty normal for the season. But there was that stretch there where we allowed Indy to get back into that game. One critical one being 3 straight runs for a 3-and-out that we gave them the ball back after their score, that I don't have an explanation. I don't have an explanation of why that was the right setup.
So I'm going to get killed for this. I don't even care. Come into my mentions. I'm going to sound like a homer for a second here because I think it's going to be overstated this week, those runs. Because, like you said, at the end of the day, the pass go exactly right around where the Bills are. Every game, it was no different. We saw more from Josh, but I expected to see more of the runs from Josh. I think now's the time you do that. You kind of hold that in your pocket the regular season because I don't want to say it doesn't matter if he gets hurt, but if you don't win this game.
I just checked 63-37% wise, 63% pass, 37 run, a little below our season average, but pretty close.
Pretty close, right? And it's always going to fluctuate in those numbers. I liked the idea of these runs, to be honest. I think you got a team that plays a lot of soft zone, a lot of cover 2. They're playing light boxes. I think the failure of these runs was on the offensive line, not on the play calling. I don't think our offensive line.
Adam making the point here. Like, you should be able to convert with 2 runs from 2nd and 2. You should.
Yes. I agree. And I don't necessarily, that one drive I'm going to have to go back and take a look at because I do agree with you there. The 3 runs in a row felt, again, in hindsight, when it didn't work, super frustrating, right? Like, and you're just seeing everyone on Twitter yelling at Dable, what are you doing? QB runs worked a number of times. We scored on that in the red zone where Josh kept the RPO and took it in. We saw a number of designed runs work for Josh Allen in this game. It was really the only thing on the ground that worked was getting Josh working on the ground. The problem in the run game, to me, is the offensive line. And I think if they execute some of those plays, we would have saw a lot more production out of those plays. I think the plays were fine. The execution was very flawed. And so that's where I'm at with it. Because look back to the playoffs last year. I've rewatched that game more times than is mentally healthy to watch that Texans game. Yeah. And Josh had, I swear to God, 2 chances to take 60-yard outside QB runs to the house. These plays work when they're executed. They weren't executed in that Texas game in the second level. Today, they weren't even executed at the line of scrimmage. And you saw Josh running into the back of people because holes weren't opening up. And once that run play is called, that's it. You're kind of running with it. So I think there's probably some criticism on Dable and some of the situational stuff that he called. But I forget who said it, but like they said, you got to be able to convert on a 2nd and short, on a 3rd and 2. Like, you have to be able to push those forward in playoff football. And that's going to be something that rears its head. I know people love, hey, let's never run it. Let's just pass it all the time. A lot of bad explosive plays also happen when the pass game. You saw the sack against Josh.
Look how Indy moved the ball for a good chunk of the time. I mean, absolutely. They answered back. That when we took the lead, where I kind of thought we had put the game away. And don't worry, Chris, we are absolutely going to talk about that play in just a little bit. Don't you worry. That's going to come up. So when we take the lead to go up 24-10, at that point, I can't lie, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, it's into the 4th quarter. We're up 24-10. I'm like, all right, it was a little stressful, but we finally put this team away. We're in good shape. Everything's going to be fine. They had 2 runs for 50 yards to answer back on that play. One of them with another infuriating missed tackle. So we'll get to that on the defensive side of the ball. But running the ball isn't automatically a bad thing. Our effectiveness in running the ball is a bad thing.
It is. And I think most of it, I think a lot of people are frustrated with the running backs. I think if you go do a deep dive into this run game for the year, I think there's a lot of misses and miscommunication and problems along our offensive line in the run game. I know they've gotten a lot of kudos this year for what they've done in keeping Josh upright for a number of games and not allowing sacks, but I don't think this unit is as good necessarily as maybe we think and have the confidence in them.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment here. From a receiving core standpoint, obviously, great game from Stephon Diggs. Killer touchdown, again, the one that I kind of thought was the dagger. Ended up 6 for 128 and a touchdown. Cole Beasley, absolute warrior on the field today. You could see him laboring through every single drive, getting himself back into the huddle, trying to get himself back out there. It makes me question whether he should have played or whether we could have tried to have Isaiah McKenzie out there and wave him. But again, third and Beasley. He had so many third down conversions, caught all 7 of his targets, got extra yards on almost every single one of them. And today, probably Gabe Davis's best game as a Buffalo Bill. Just all the things that I had been frustrated or was unsure about early on in the year. The body control, the toe tap, coming back and attacking the ball and not letting the defender break on the ball and get it. 4 for 85, and all 4 of them were critical, especially the 2 on the 2-minute drive drill. I thought the receivers played really well today.
I thought the receivers played pretty well. I'm a little frustrated with Smoke.
Maybe could have fought back on that one that ended up getting picked off, and he let Kaiir cut him off.
That was there, and then he had one go right through his hands.
Yeah.
It was a perfectly placed ball right up above his head, went right through his hands. And otherwise, besides that, pretty quiet. And if you're quiet, the defense get the ball around to whoever's open and finds people, that's frustrating. I'm not sure. That's one of those things I'm going to definitely take a look at when we get film this week, is see where he was, if he was getting open, kind of what the looks were going to him. But I expected more from him, knowing that he was fully healthy, and this was his first game back with Josh fully healthy. I expected a little bit more explosive plays coming from him.
Yeah, I love this from Chris. Gabe Davis, Mr. Rubber Pellets. That's a nice one.
He better be on toe drag swag this week.
So if anybody didn't see it, Kyle Brandt afterwards tweeted a picture with like a crazy Nate face saying that the toe drag swag segment may never be the same after what Gabe Davis just did on those back-to-back catches.
Yeah.
To wrap up the offensive side of the ball, I thought the offensive line honestly was pretty good. I think your criticism for the run game is very valid. They didn't get movement. This is a really stout defensive front. I thought in the pass game they did okay. Josh certainly had to get away from a fair amount of pressure that came. So this was not the best offensive line performance on the season. I don't think it was terrible, but the 6 hits, the 2 sacks, the lack of a running game, this was not the best offensive line performance, albeit against a good front.
Yeah, it is a good front. And here's the problem. And again, I think, I got crushed a little bit about talking some of my worries about this Indy matchup. This is a good team, man. They have good players on every side of the ball in all their phases. So, yeah, it's a solid front. But I didn't think Josh looked particularly comfortable back there for a lot of the day. And I think that was a lot on the offensive line. They didn't do a terrible job. It wasn't like free rushers. One of the sacks was a free rusher, but it wasn't. People were not able to block, but Josh was having to extend plays, which really has been the story of his career and all season. And done it well. But I didn't think he was getting out of the pocket too early. I think he was sensing pressure.
He didn't bail from clean pockets for sure.
Right.
When he bailed, it's because he needed to get out.
Yeah, and I think that's a sign. I have some frustrations with the offensive line play, and I think we've given him a pass this year because the Bills have been putting up so many points and being able to make the explosive, and Josh extends those plays that it doesn't matter. In the playoffs, it's going to matter more and more each round as we go on, that they need to do their job and keep Josh upright and get that run game established. So another thing I want to look into, and I'm not the best at it, so I might lean on Eric and our guy Russ over at Cover One to take a look at what's going on with this offensive line and where we can find improvements.
So a couple quick questions, good ones in the chat here. From Kyle, I had a lot of this of why no Isaiah McKenzie. I'm a little surprised it was 0. I don't know that I recall him being on the field at all. But when you have such a zone-heavy team, that jet motion is a really valuable weapon against man, because it's indicating what's going on. When they're just running zone, the vast majority of the time, it's not quite as effective and you're not getting your bang for your buck. So I am surprised it went all the way to 0, but I get why it was much less today. And it's not as crazy that he didn't get many snaps today, especially with the way Beasley was gutting it out and the way that they were moving there. But certainly, obviously, I would have liked to have seen that and maybe even a shakeup in the run game to give him one of those just to try to get to an edge and try to create something. But I get why it wasn't a huge piece.
Yeah. And even like you said, though, in that zone scheme, those runs don't always work so well. If you're in cover 2 and that corner's in the flat and you do a jet sweep, that corner's still going to be there. You're not really doing anything to clear him out of the way on some of that jet sweep stuff. It's really not super effective against zone. And we don't know how injured McKenzie was. Yes, he was active, but they might have said, hey, we're keeping him active in case Beasley goes down, right? And we're only going to use him in this case. We don't want 2 hurt receivers or to injure him more. So I think it might have been a little bit of injury management and just kind of him being there in case of emergency. But all those people that were yelling at us about the early turnaround last week, it's going to be real nice. The way Beasley was laboring out there.
Getting that extra day now.
That extra day means everything right now.
Yeah. We'll see where it goes. A couple other questions on the running back position.
Wade can't be brought up, right?
Yeah, one, Christian Wade is not eligible to be brought up all season. He can't be claimed by another team. We can't bring him up. He is not eligible. Zach Moss, it did not look good. I don't know exactly what it is. It looked like one of those where his foot was against the field and then the leg.
Out indefinitely on the report.
The leg got rolled over weirdly. We got to hope that doesn't impact him next year or isn't a major thing. Those radial things can be bad. So we're going to hope it's just a sprain, nothing serious, but I'm going to assume we don't have him for this playoff run right now. The options are, so obviously Singletary is there. Taiwan Jones will continue to be a game day active. He is not a running back. So now I genuinely hesitate whether the answer is TJ Yeldon or whether it's Antonio Williams, because
I think it's Yeldon.
I think you're right. The only reason I hesitate is I almost think Antonio Williams can play that Zach Moss role better than Singletary can, and Singletary can play that Yeldon role as well as Yeldon can, but having both Singletary and Yeldon is limiting in game planning. So I think the more likely path is Singletary and Yeldon are the active running backs along with Taiwan Jones. But I won't be shocked if Antonio Williams is part of that package next week. I don't think that would be crazy.
My only thing is that, and I know Antonio Williams has been on and off this roster, and I know that he had a couple fun runs in that Miami game, but there's a reason he's been on and off this roster a little bit. And some of that is, we know from experience with rookies, I have no idea how he is in pass coverage. Yeah, I don't know
Travis
that I want.
Said it. We don't know the answer to that. And anyone assuming that he's just some great guy being able to unlock, we don't know if he can pick up blitzes, and putting him in there could cost us Josh.
Yes, and some of the option route stuff, you have to know this offense in and out. There's a lot more to it than just running the ball and having a good run style, which I agree with you on the point that his run style is more similar.
That's the only reason I could see it.
I do think we look back at what happened last time Moss was out. TJ Yeldon was activated. And I think the coaches are going to lean on what they're comfortable with, especially in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to play around too much with that formula. And Yeldon actually did pretty good in some of that short yardage work while Zach Moss was out. It actually surprised me how good he did in some of the short yardage stuff. I'm not a person that believes TJ Yeldon's been locked in some jail and deserves a role, but I think he is that guy that if Singletary or Moss gets hurt, that he has real football experience. He's been a pro for a long time, and I think that they trust him probably at this point more than Williams to be a playoff running back for this team. So even if it's just the fact that they trust him to have some pass protection, Yeah,
and it's more likely. It's the more likely solution. I don't think it's a slam dunk. I think there's a possibility. I think there's a possibility that you see all of them. I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and look at the roster now and figure out where that would go.
Josh Allen's our third running back.
Yeah, no, seriously. He had the most carries today. Josh Allen led the team in carries today.
RB1, baby.
Our short yardage back, that's not even a joke. Our short yardage back is Josh Allen. I don't know that I love that, but we'll get there. And believe me, I've had a couple other comments here in the chat that maybe the running back position is a bigger need going into the offseason than what we thought it was. Maybe it is. We'll talk about it. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Right now, we got the guys that we got. So Risk It for the Biscuit, one, is a fantastic screen name. Good job. Second, I don't hate this, similar to the way that there was kind of a silver lining or a positive that came out of the Hail Mary, was that maybe this was a good reality check and a good humbling win, that it's great that we won, but that maybe it's not the end of the world that they had a tough, gutted out win here against a team that they weren't riding too high and now need to recalibrate, focus on it, move forward. I know that Sean McDermott will use that in the film breakdown here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think they anticipated this would be a battle of a game, too. I think, fans on Twitter and definitely people in my mentions were, I think, way more confident in that Indy wasn't that good of a team, and this is a 2 versus 7 seed, and we saw everyone in the national media pick them. I think they expected to go into this game and that it was going to be a dogfight. But I agree with you in the way that it went down and how close it went down, and they're going to make Josh feel uncomfortable with how he handled his moment and see if he rises to the occasion to not even let it get that close again, because that's what happened with that Arizona game. Was the Bills allowed that game to get close, and I think they preached that all week long. And like, hey, we can't allow games to get this close, because it could have been the difference of 3 plays or so in this moment. So we need to really start going back to what we did the last 9 weeks and really just stick it to teams and not even allow games to get close. So I do expect them to come out with a little bit more fire in the next game.
Yeah, and for Cliff's comment here, you're going to hear me say survive and advance a lot going forward, so people should get used to that. Before we wrap up offense here, I just do want to comment quickly. I was frustrated in the moment, and I think my frustration was justified with Brian Daboll in the moment. Overall, the idea that Brian Daboll had some horrible game when we put up 27 points on the Indianapolis Colts is just not valid. I mean, the Bills put up what I'm guessing is, one of the higher yardage totals the Colts have given up all season, and one of the highest point totals, the third highest point total that the Colts have given up all season. This was not some terrible game by Daboll. It was not his best game. I think there were some questionable calls, but a lot of that was the Colts are a really good defense, and they had answers. And the reason, you want to know one of the other names that's getting all the head coaching buzz? It's Matt Eberflus, the defensive coordinator for the Colts, because he's really smart too and makes really good adjustments too. So don't get me wrong. I don't think this was Daboll's shining best, game plan and game calling in the moment and getting the rhythm and feel of the game all season. I had some frustration. That isn't the same as saying he had a bad game or was exposed or should be fired. That stuff is nonsense.
Yeah, I don't agree. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe if he's trying to tank it and trying to just, throw those head coaching in and be like, hey, if everybody wants to assume that he's terrible, by all means, assume he's terrible. We'll keep him for next year.
It's going to be a narrative this week, though. You're going to hear it on all the local talk radio shows, on a lot of podcasts. People are going to be talking about how the QB runs are stupid and the running the ball is dumb and we should never run the ball and all these things. You will hear those things. And I think schematically, when you look just on when you are matching up and getting ready for a team, I think when you match up against this team and you look at the way they play defense, I think you do see some light boxes, and I think you see some ability to get some runs up the middle with that too high safety look. And I think that's what Daboll saw, was there's opportunities for these runs to work if executed. And again, I think it was an execution issue more than it was this strategy's stupid and we should never do it. We're going to see more of that if teams are going to throw us these types of looks. You got to execute. Another thing that went into this is, for probably the most frustrating part of this game, is the Bills had terrible field position for the entire first half.
We normally wait for defense.
Yeah.
Let's go into special teams now. We normally pivot into defense at this point, but special teams was a weird dichotomy today. So let's start with some of the negatives and we'll work our way positive. Andre Roberts infuriated me on that one. Again, the same way that I've been a huge defender of Brian Daboll in many situations, I've been a huge defender of Andre Roberts, talked about how good he is, Pro Bowl, All-Pro, deserved all those things, because he's been an aggressive, good decision maker. He catches the ball when he should, he returns it when he should, and he takes advantage and does a great job when he should. He was purely trying to make a play and pressing and thinking, I can spark the team, I can make this happen. And he took a ball that was pinned in the corner 4 yards deep in the end zone, which is the worst possible spot where you have no options to run, and gets tackled at the 12-yard line. And then we have a penalty that brings it back to the 6. I never mind hustle mistakes. Like, hey, you make a mistake, you're trying to make a play, it didn't work out. That was a bad decision by Andre Robertson. That frustrated me.
Yeah, I agree. I have no defense of that. I agree with you. I think he was pressing to try to get field position back for the team, because it's frustrating, man. If people have ever played football and even if you're a potent offense and you know that you can try to make up for that, it is terrible to always start in poor field position. And then the other team gets great field position the whole time. I talk about toxic differential all the time. If you can control field position like that, like, honestly, shame on the Colts for not getting up big when they controlled field position that entire half.
Yeah. They played the entire first half in our side of the field.
Yeah, if I'm Frank Wright, that's really where I'm hammering my team is, dude, we had this. I mean, they had the ball at like the 40. 35, 40, almost the entire first half, and you can't put up more points than you did. Pretty bad for you. But so that was a super frustrating thing, and I'm pretty frustrated Roberts took that ball out. But I think this coaching staff's honest. They're going to work with him on that. It's going to be a terrible film day for him when he has to deal with that play and answer for it. So
the other two parts of special teams here, we didn't have any punt returns. So that was obviously a piece of it. They had 2 punts. Both of them were either pinned touchbacks or fair catches. Tyler Bass was fantastic. Made all his extra points, dead center, 2 longer field goals, including the highest stress, most pressure kick that Tyler Bass has had to experience this year, a 54-yarder that he absolutely crushed that would have been good from 60-plus easily.
Easy.
That was incredibly encouraging to go down the side. And obviously the game ends 27-24. It wasn't that kind of play in the moment, but it was huge when it happened because it made it a 2-score game. Tons of pressure. It was one of those plays where the analytics were very much 50-50. It was 4th and 6 or a 56-yard field goal. It was a real coin flip on, hey, what's the right conversion rate? And also when you bring into play getting the field goal, puts you up 2 possessions. I think he made the right decision, and obviously seeing him stripe it like that was fantastic.
Yeah, and this is a great opportunity to instill even more confidence in your really solid, good rookie kicker to allow him to go out there, make a big kick in a playoff game at home. Like they said on the broadcast, like it wasn't a windy day for Buffalo, but like for regular kickers in the NFL.
You mean for a guy who's normally kicking indoors and doinked one?
Right, exactly. And so to kick outside in the elements in the playoffs and to get him a big kick like that. When was the last time we had him have to make a kick from 50? Like they've been scoring so often that this was kind of a nice opportunity for him to get a real kick in the game, because I think we're going to have more close games in this playoffs, and we're going to need to rely on him, and it could be relying on him from 50-plus. We saw it last year in the playoffs. They didn't even have that option. When Stephen Hausch goes on this team, if they wanted to keep the ball, they had to go for it on 4th and 6. So having the option and then building confidence in was a huge win for the Buffalo special teams.
And I'll say for spin here about the last possession, when they had the ball for the 59-yarder, what you have to remember is that was the difference between going up 3 and going up 6. And the miss would have given them the ball at midfield with a ton of time left. That's much less risk-reward benefit when you're doing that. If he hits it, that's great. They still get the ball and are still within a touchdown. And if you miss it, you're down 3 and they have the ball at midfield and need 15 yards to be able to get their field goal attempt. So in that spot, I actually think that's the smarter decision. It would have been cool.
You want to give them more field to have to drive in 2 minutes than give them
that ended up being critical. Like they ended up not ever getting into field goal range and had to try a Phillip Rivers Hail Mary, which is not the same as a Kyler Murray Hail Mary.
Yes.
And then the last one on special teams, I will say for the kickers, I don't hate it that our rookie kicker went 2 for 2 and was nails, and their rookie kicker that everybody celebrated doinked one, and it ended up being a 3-point game. That's
just because he wears glasses. People
love the rec specs.
Yeah.
Corey Bojorquez also, you talk about how horrible the field position was in that first half. He was huge in not making that worse. That could have been multiple drives that they started in Bills territory. He had several where he knocked them back to the 35 or the 40, or was able to get them back into much more reasonable position. They still, and then, some of those, when you talk about a first half with great field position and bend but don't break defense, sometimes that extra 15, 20 yards where they get no return and they have those different setups that are a little bit tougher, some of those ended up mattering where they weren't able to convert. So really nice game from Corey Bojorquez. He ends up averaging 47 yards and overall was outstanding. I think that he ended up with about a 44-yard net average, pushing them back pretty well.
Yep.
Switching over to the defense, I'm going to talk for a second about a couple positive things. Micah Hyde made a critical play at the end of the game. You could see him lining up from way back and came up and like volleyball spiked it down. You could tell they've been practicing that a lot. There were some very nice plays in the moment that were needed to stop them from getting scores. 2 goal line stands on 4th down, breakups that mattered. So there were probably a half dozen, maybe 10 really nice plays in critical moments. Otherwise, holy crap, was this an infuriating game. We watched the Colts go for 27 first downs and 472 yards. This was a infuriating defensive effort to watch, even though we came out of it with a win.
I was told not to worry about Michael Pittman, and I want to go to all those people's mentions and tell them that I was right. He had a pretty good day today, guys. He had, what did he end up with? 90 yards on 5 receptions, 18 yards per. I mean, they were moving. I think
plus an 11-yard run.
Plus the 11-yard run.
He had 100, over 100 total.
Yeah. Granted, he dropped the difference maker in the game on that 4th and 6, so whatever. But yeah, no, this offense, we talked about it with Zach. Like this offense, I think people thought, you hear the narrative that they're such a good running team and everybody is scared of Taylor, and for good reason. I mean, like you said, that one drive where they just lit up 50 yards in 2 rushing plays and moved the ball down the field. Like
163 yards rushing at 5.4 yards a clip was killer. And so much of that after contact. Much of it after first contact.
Definitely. And so we knew to expect that, but I think a lot of people thought Phillip Rivers' arm's dying and this passing game's not really much, but it is. This is a good passing game, and Phillip put some dimes out there. If anything, they lost production with drops. They had probably 5 or 6 drops that I can recall.
Jonathan Taylor had 2 that were both first downs.
Yeah, they drive stalled because of drop passes, not because of what the Bills defense did. The guys were open, ball hit them in the hands, and they didn't come up with it. So Phillip Rivers was dealing today, and this was a worry of mine, is guys that get the ball out quick and are accurate we the Bills. If the Bills can't get pass rush on a guy and get a guy off his spots, the coverage isn't always good enough on the other end, and there's pockets in the zones where if a smart enough guy can find it, those crossers were killing the Bills all day.
Did Taron Johnson touch him once? Did any other defender touch Phillip Rivers? Taron Johnson got him on a corner blitz one time, and he still got the ball out.
He got the ball out, but he made him uncomfortable. He got him off his spot.
Yeah, and I will say the defensive line had a handful of plays where they made him uncomfortable, but not that many.
Not enough. And his weird quick release like that.
Yeah, it's so weird.
It's so weird. I had like a weird pop-up or something on my but yeah, this was going to be a tough game for the defense, but I didn't think it was going to be the type of game where they were just kind of hemorrhaging yards, really. And I'm all for the bend but don't break, but this was too much, and I think they relied a little too heavily on zone. It's hard to tell exactly what coverages they're in on the broadcast. When we go back and look, I think they went a little too heavy zone and probably should have manned up a little bit more often, brought some blitzes to see if they could get some pressure on Rivers. I would have liked to see more jamming at the line with how quickly he gets the ball out, sort of like they did against the Steelers, get up on the line, jam these guys. It seemed like they relied a little too heavily on the zone. And those crossers, there was miscommunication on a number of crossers. We saw the miscommunication between Trey and Matt Milano, which was similar to that Seahawks
gimme
play.
touchdown. gimme touchdown in that spot.
You can't have these miscommunications and stuff in the playoffs. It's killing me. And I'm sure Eric's going to prove me all wrong this week when I'm talking about this stuff. But it just felt like there was a ton of miscommunication and a ton of error on the side of the defense.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Derek, for the shout out. And I was impressed with that shot put touchdown to Dawson Knox was pretty cool.
Cool.
There's a good discussion going on with some of the folks here as well about the play call or the play clock thing. I think that Gene Steratore did a decent job in the game. There is a mechanism where the referee is instructed, you see 0, you look down and see if they snap the ball, and then you throw the flag. And if, as you see 0 and then look down, the ball is being snapped, it's okay. So they kind of get 0.5 beat of where it goes. Phillip Rivers wore that the heck out, and I'm certain several of those were actually a delay of game. Not all of them, but there had to have been, 8 of them during the game where I saw 0 hit and they still snapped the ball. All 8 of them were not within that half beat.
Sure. It's frustrating when you're playing a quarterback like that. Phillip Rivers does this a lot. Aaron Rodgers, almost every play for Aaron Rodgers that clocks that. Ask Bears and Vikings fans how frustrated they're yelling at their TVs every week that he's not getting those calls. Tom Brady used to do it a lot. Josh Allen actually has done it a handful of times. He goes right down to the wire. So I think I agree. Gene Steratore explained the mechanism, and you're talking about humans here. There's going to be a delay, and they're not going to catch everyone. And I don't think it was the difference in the game. The way they were dealing, whenever he snapped it, they were still, the Bills didn't execute on the other side of it. So would I have liked to get a couple of them and back them up? Sure. Bills have to control, to take one out of Sean McDermott's sayings, you can only control what you can control. And the Bills didn't do that on the defensive side of the ball for a lot of the game.
All right. We have now reached the moment where we're going to complain about a fumble.
Can we talk about the Trey White deflection first? Was that? No, that was after.
That was after. So we'll go to it in order. Right. So the Bills are set up where it's 4th and 10. They have the Colts in a great position. We finally got them out of schedule. They had stayed on schedule all game. So many 2nd and 2s and stuff like that. They finally got them off schedule. We get him to 4th and 10, and Phillip Rivers finds Zach Pascal. And it was a great job, similar to the idea Pascal and Jack Doyle both found spots in the zone all day long. It was frustrating. Pascal gets it, and instead of, some people brought up the example of the previous Rams game where the player pretty obviously tried to give himself up and set the ball down. Pascal got up and was trying to gain more yards. He got up, and then Jordan Poyer and Matt Milano punched the ball out. It was one of the most universally agreed calls that I remember seeing. Everyone online, everyone watching the game, the announcers watching the game, Colts fans, Zach, I follow Zach and Chris Blystone, the other guy over at Stampede Blue. Both of them said, oh man, the game's over. Like, that was it. The game was over. How the NFL could come out and then say, they didn't even say anything. They just said the play stands and moved on and tried to give the Bills back their timeout as like some little parting gift of, hey, sorry, we'll give you your timeout back. I don't understand. I don't understand how that wasn't clear, irrefutable evidence. His knee was up, then he got contacted, then they stripped the ball before he went back down, then there was a clear recovery. Every piece of it was there. My phone exploded in like friends checking on me to make sure I was okay.
It's my turn.
Yeah.
I have nothing to say about it. Screw it. It didn't end up affecting the game. I agree with what you said. I don't ever want to talk about it again.
Oh, God, that took 3 months off my life. At some point, when I'm old and like 87 years old, I'm going to die 3 months earlier than I should have because of that play.
Yeah, I wasn't okay with it. I'm not okay with it. But it didn't end up changing the outcome of the game, luckily, for the Bills. What's really cool, adversity-wise, is the way the Bills' defense responded to it. I think right after that, they probably played the best defense they played the rest of the game. And that's a huge punch in the gut, because I think they all saw it on the Jumbotron, and the fans and everybody in that stadium was sort of celebrating. You saw Jordan Poyer celebrating, like, yeah, we got the ball. That's it.
You saw it. Like, they showed showed the steps of a fumble.
And then to immediately have to turn around, go back out on the field and still hold your ground, that shows in-game adversity that you're dealing with. And I thought they responded fantastic. My God, the worst part was I was like, oh, you have to do all that mental change of pace where you just thought you won the game and you were going to get this challenge. And that had to be the longest challenge I've ever seen in the history. They took that thing right down to the last minute. The longer it went on, the more worried I got. Like, damn, they're not going to do this. They're going to keep this play standing. And then to go back out and just kind of put that play behind you, which is what defensive coaches always talk about. You got to play that next play. It's true.
Yeah. I'm really glad the defense handled adversity better than Bills Mafia, because ask all of yourselves this: in that moment when they didn't overturn the ball and they gave the Colts the first down, what did every fiber of your Bills history and experience as a being, as a Bills Mafia member and a Bills fan, what did it tell you?
It told me to drive down to Orchard Park in my car and have a conversation with the official.
Like everything in me, every fiber in my being said, oh my God, we're going to lose it now. That's it. Like that's what happens to the Bills. That's how it works. I've had 25 years of experience. We're screwed now. They're going to win. Like everything in me.
Flashes of what happened to the Saints. Like a big call like that where it's just talked about all summer long.
Yes.
How the Bills got screwed out of a play. I just had these flashes of ESPN talking about this for the next 8 months of, the Bills got screwed, and Bills fans putting out petitions to like sue the NFL that we got screwed out of a game.
But your example you brought up is perfect, because the thing about everyone remembers that obvious pass interference from the Saints, but a lot of people glaze over the fact there was a whole nother possession after that play that the Saints had an opportunity to still win that game. And most reasonable people would say, yes, that was a horrible call. You got screwed. That might have been able to end the game, but you had multiple plays after that to stop it. It wasn't a touchdown on that game. It wasn't 0-0 on the clock. You had a chance. The Bills had a chance. They had 3 more plays after that. You saw a great tip away from Tremaine Edmonds. You saw a great pass breakup from Trey
with
White.
A beautiful blitz by Taryn.
Yes, with him coming off the edge again. And you can tell that was the second time. The first time he got there and almost hit him, you could tell Rivers was aware of it. And then Micah Hyde coming up and just volleyball spiking the Hail Mary. They had a chance to make a play, and then they converted. And it wasn't a good defensive game. It was one of the most infuriating, frustrating ones to watch all season. Our tackling wasn't great. When it mattered, those 6 to 10 plays I talked about earlier in the game where they stepped up at the goal line in the moment, held the field goals, held the 4th down turnovers, and those 3 plays at the end when they had a chance to win the game, they stepped up and made a play when it mattered, and that's what matters.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Whew. All right, switching over to some of our sponsored segments here, we will mess around and look at our Uncle Jumbo's responsible play of the game. And I think there's quite a few options to be able to look at and appreciate it. Jason, I appreciate that. It was the first time, the first playoff team in history to have 450 yards, 0 turnovers. They were 11-0 prior to now and won by an average of 21 points. The Bills just beat a team who had 450 yards and 0 turnovers for the first loss in playoff history. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. It goes along with, we talk a lot about toxic differential. I think we counted Colts won 9-5.
Yeah, the Bills won a game where they lost toxic differential for the first time this year.
I'm telling you, every metric I've ever looked at that shows that a team should win a game, the Colts won. Crazy.
Yeah. So I'm going to go. I'll let you go first for the responsible play of the game. I think I have one, and I'll kind of think we're going to pick the same one. The
54-yard field goal, going for it for the field goal, in my opinion, was the responsible play of the game. I think it was the right call. It built confidence in Tyler Bass, and it gave you the 27-16 lead, which I think. Wait, no, was it 27-16 at that? Yeah. 27-16 lead at that point. I loved everything about that. It looked like Josh really wanted to go for it. He kind of seemed sad that they didn't, and you could see Brian Dable. They were talking it out during that timeout. I think it was the right play to eventually do it. So I was happy with that.
I had that as an honorable mention. I also had Josh somehow getting them to jump off sides on the most obvious, hey, I'm not actually going to snap it on fourth down in that 2-minute drive at the end of the first half, got them to jump off sides. They end up scoring a touchdown. That's a 4-point play. Yep. That would have been a field goal. Bass probably would have hit the field goal from there. They were like the 21. It would have been a 38-yard field goal. There would have been a 43-yarder because they got the 5 yards to move up to the 21. That was great and a good one. I'm actually going to go. I like this one from the guys at Blacko Sports. McD with the timeout ninja at the end. It's a shame that was necessary, but it's huge that he had the presence of mind to do that when he saw that should have been overturned. Now, in hindsight, that ended up not mattering, and they didn't overturn what was an obvious fumble call. But that was fantastic of him to have the presence of mind to say, "Hey, what the heck are you doing? You're not going to." Review this, I better, shove it in there to stop it.
More inappropriate words.
Some colorful language in his version of it. Looking at the West Her drive of the game, our friends over at West Her and 23 dealerships in the New York State area. Make sure you're finding them. Any vehicle that you're looking for, you can take it out for a nice drive. I think that drive at the end of the first half was an awful good one. Easy. You see John talking about that toe drag swag legend. Those things are going to be coming up here. I love here. What did they call them earlier? The little black bubbles pop in the pellet, the black pellets. That was pretty fantastic. That drive at the end of the first half, to be able to do it, they come back and get the double dip with the score of the opening part of the second half, those 10 points. That was a huge swing in momentum in a first half that Indy honestly dominated, and the fact that the Bills came out of that with them getting the points from it was pretty incredible.
Totally. We love a good double dip over in the Cover One Slack channel. It's one of our favorite things in the world. The momentum swing of that moment was just perfect. It was exactly what this Bills team needed in the moment. A great drive, seeing the rookie come up big, seeing Josh Allen just drop dimes around the field. It was perfect. Allowed them to get the double dip. I think Bills fans needed that more than the team almost, because we were falling apart both in the Slack channel and on Twitter at that moment. Indy's driving. They're about to go up. So what would they have been up at that point? What was the score? 10-7. They would have been up, 17-7 at that point?
Yes.
That game starts to feel like it's about to get away from you. And instead, the Bills come in. It's basically a 10-point swing because they were able to double dip on the other end. Loved everything about it. I think it's not only their best drive of the game, I think it's the biggest drive of the best year in Bills history. It might be one of the best drives in team history at this point, because there's no way you could have told me they were going to go 10 plays, 96 yards in a minute and 30 seconds, and they did it. They've been able to do that type of stuff all year, though. I don't know why I doubted it, but they did it, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Appreciate Paul here. Paul's always one of the most consistent guys in our comments here. If you're you're watching this on YouTube, give us some question or comments. Aaron and I always try to check them out and answer those. A couple of different questions that are coming in here. What do you guys think about reports of a huge upcoming deal with Allen? I don't know about reports or where I've learned that nothing leaks out of One Bills Drive, but I will tell you, I do expect Josh Allen to get extended this spring. I do think that it's likely. I don't see any reason that they would wait and just exercise his fifth-year deal and move in. The Chiefs showed that you can exercise the fifth-year deal. They gave Mahomes a 10-year, $500 million deal and made zero changes to their cap hit for this year and next year. The Bills can do the same thing. I fully expect Josh Allen to be extended, and I think it's going to be an obscene amount of money.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit here. I've definitely talked about it on Twitter. I think it's a guarantee that it happens this spring or summer, that he gets a big deal. I'm going to assume the leak came from his agent to Ian Rappaport, and that's where I'm expecting it. Not that they're not trying to put pressure or anything on the Bills, but I think that it's one of those things they want to get some good PR out ahead of the playoffs, that Josh Allen's going to be probably one of the next guys to get one of those gigantic QB franchise-changing deals. I totally expect it. I think he deserves it. When you play at an MVP level, even if it's for a single season and your trajectory is heading the way his is, and you break all these team records and get your team in the playoffs, and now you top it off with a playoff win, he's got all the leverage in the world to get this deal done, and I totally
so much. So much. John, you deserve to enjoy every second of this, and every Bills fan should enjoy every moment of this. Question from Richard, thoughts on Kenny Stills for next week?
Maybe. I still think that he's a, break glass in case of emergency type guy. And maybe they come out of this week and Beasley's really sore the next couple of days after giving it a go to play, because I'm guarantee you he got some type of pain management from the staff and he was still laboring out there and walking with a gait. So I don't know. I think we'll see the next couple of days. If Beasley's not going to be a go this next week, then I think you definitely bring in Stills. But I think whether Beasley plays or not is going to be what determines whether Stills gets on the field. But if Beasley's good to go, I don't think that they're going to not activate anyone and let Stills play.
I do think one more week of practice with an extra day for Sunday being the rest day. Last week Kenny Stills had one walkthrough and 2 practices. Right. Now you have the chance for him to get some reps. If they decide Cole Beasley can't play, I think Stills would come up, and I actually think you'd see a split between Isaiah McKenzie getting more reps and Kenny Stills. With overall, you would just have John Brown and Gabe Davis on the outside and Stephon Diggs more in the slot and 3 wide receiver sets. I'm a little more concerned with who the running back's going to be because I'm assuming Zach Moss is not going to play. So that's a tough one to be able to see. I don't know.
Real quick, sorry to get rid of your question there. I don't think Diggs played through pain. I think he was on the injury report, but he looked fine all week. He said he was fine. Everyone's playing through some type of pain at this point in the season, but I think he got whatever treatments he needed and was totally fine. He looked fine.
You said that you saw a Bleacher Report that right now it's out indefinitely?
That was the last report whenever an hour now.
Okay. So I know I saw a couple other questions on, we appreciate you, Jack. You guys are very generous tonight. This really means a lot. Duffs or Barbell? I am fully team Barbell. That is no question. I've said this a lot. People in Western New York get to be snobs about wings because they really are excellent. But in order for it to be good, to even stay in business, you have to be really, really good. So the 30th best wing place in Buffalo is like the second best wing place in most other cities because the depth of it, you have to be really good to stay in business. It's like pizza in New York. Like, yes, your best restaurant in other New York in restaurants or other cities is really good, but the 300th best pizza place in New York City is also awesome because you can't stay in business if you're not. So so many Bills places or wing places around Western New York are awesome, but I prefer Barbell.
I'm not. I treat all wings almost equally in the area here. I do. I like Duff's. I like Barbell. I think they're both really good. I like La Hacienda Brighton. I like Franco's wings. Like every pizza place, every pizza joint in Buffalo has good wings, in my opinion. I've never had a bad wing while my time here.
Yeah, I've had bad wings outside of Buffalo, let me tell you. So a couple ones. I don't know that I saw any other injuries that are coming to mind now. I'll have to look back at the reports. A couple guys got checked on during the game, but I don't know that I saw any other injuries outside of Moss and then obviously seeing Beasley labor. I don't remember losing anyone beyond that.
I didn't see any.
Okay. As far as getting into the next games and the rooting interest here, Jim is asking which running game is more worrisome, the Titans or the Ravens. The answer is both. This is also why we want to root for the Steelers tomorrow night. If the Steelers beat the Browns, the Bills host the Steelers, and it doesn't matter which team wins. If the Browns upset the Steelers, we play the winner of the Titans and Ravens. For our running game, the issues I saw today were missed tackles. We're not terrible at getting to the spot. We just don't bring the guy down. That makes me nervous more about Derrick Henry than Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think the way the defense played today, I'm scared of both those teams just because of some of the stuff they can do, not even just in the run game, but just what they can also do in the pass game. I'd be pretty worried about dealing with that. I'd like to play the Steelers. Very much.
Strongly. I strongly would like another shot at that.
Pat Morin show, I was on there this week, and I said, and he was even saying, we were both kind of agreeing that I'm much more worried about the Colts than I am about the Steelers. If we can get through this round, I'm way more worried about the Colts than I am about playing the Steelers again. 100%. Not that there's going to be problems, and we'll talk about that this week.
Also a good defense, but I think that I'm much more concerned. I would have much rather, if you gave me opportunities, I didn't rank it because they weren't one of the wild card teams that were eligible. They had already locked up their spot, but they were number 2 for me behind Miami of teams I wanted to play. I would have rather played Miami, and then number 2 is Pittsburgh, and I'm rooting for them like crazy tomorrow.
Definitely.
All right, a couple more questions here before we wrap. How do you think Milano's coverage skills looked against tight ends today? Milano did not have a good game today. Also, several of the things people got on him for were not on him. The mixed coverage, I think, was more on Trey White on the Jack Doyle touchdown.
100%.
There were other plays. This was not a great game. I thought Tremaine Edmonds had a better game than Milano today overall, but a lot of that you can't tell until we see the film and can break down what they were looking at. I think that Milano wasn't put in a great position to succeed today and also didn't do the best with it in his opportunities.
I think Milano made a couple plays in this game. I think when we go back, there's a number of times that he made some good plays. There's miscommunication in the zone. I think it's tough to say look against tight ends because when you're playing zone, it's not necessarily Matt Milano against the tight end, right? It's a tight end finding a pocket in the zone, and Matt Milano, whether or not he reads and over pursues on that, where that guy's got his cushion. Same type of thing Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs do to zone defenses where we see them wide open. Reverse it and flip it, that guys are finding holes in zones, and Milano either has to over pursue and get out of his zone there, and that it opens up another part of the zone, or he stays in zone and just tries to go and make the tackle. There was a couple of receptions where he had great coverage and Philip Rivers made a better throw. That happened a number of times to guys today. So I don't think Matt Milano's game was terrible. He definitely had some mistakes. They're still a young linebacking core. They're going to make some mistakes like that, but I'll take him definitely over Klein.
Oh, yeah. Padden brings up a good point here. Deion Dawkins left the game and had to come back, had to go into the locker room. When he came back out, he had to put some of his equipment back on. So I believe that he may have had to get the same liquid maybe that Lamar Jackson needed late in his game. I have a feeling he may have had to use the facilities, but we'll find out what comes back on that. We did lose Deion Dawkins weirdly for like a 3-play stretch, and then he came back on and was putting back on some of his uniform. We'll see what that ends up being. But that was somebody else who left the game at some point here. Aaron, any final thoughts as I look for any other last questions before we close?
No, I mean, I broke down and was so relieved when that ball got batted down and just went to my hands and knees. I was shaking. I'm pretty sure tears came out of my face. I could hear my neighbors screaming out in the streets as soon as this game ended. The build up to this game, a lot of the people don't get to live here in Buffalo, and to see, I'm sure you saw it all over social media. Every building in the city was lit up blue and red. My wife went out grocery shopping today and did some groceries. Everyone was lined up in their Bills gear. I went and walked my kids around today. There was tons of tailgates and people just screaming, "Go Bills!" Like, the city is just so lit up. And for that game to be as close as it was and as scary to be in another letdown in just 30 years of disappointment and letdown and same old Bills, and for it actually turn and go our way and get that monkey off our back is the most relieving thing in the world. When we started this show for the season, we talked about what are the expectations. AFC Championship, home playoff game, win a playoff game. The Bills have checked all those boxes. This season, no matter what happens going forward, this season is a success in the big picture of the process. We're playing with house money now, guys. This is the best opportunity that this team has had. They can make a run. If they don't, they're right where they want to be in the This is where Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott had this team lined up to be at this point, and hats off to them. I hope they win all the offseason awards that they can, because they deserve every minute of it.
Absolutely. So the good things that come from this, all of the things that people were frustrated with, whether Brian Daboll had his best game as a play caller, whether Andre Roberts was pressing a little bit and, trying to make a play, whether Josh has to learn not to take that sack late in the game, whether it's more sound tackling drills and breaking down film and having some really frustrating film sessions with the defense of what they just went through. They get to do all those things after winning, surviving, and advancing. That's what this is all about. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be great. Lots of people bringing it up here with, we saw the Patriots scrape out so many of these games that they didn't.
Rule.
Yes, the tuck rule. That's literally a perfect analogy. All of these things of games they did not deserve, but they found a way to do it, and they found a way to win. We get to do all of those things during a win, preparing for our next game. We now get an extra day's rest and get to watch both games tomorrow from an analytical view of who is our opponent and who do we need to be worried about. All of those things that this wasn't perfect. It was one of the uglier games we've seen in a bit, and they won. All of those things that you said so well, that we said at the beginning of the year, we've now crossed that hurdle. We broke that curse. It's 25 years. We have a playoff win now. Josh Allen has a playoff win. Sean McDermott has a playoff win. Brandon Beane has a playoff win. We now are in position to move forward, recalibrate, and win again. And now it's just survive and advance the rest of the way.
You know who else won?
Who's
the
that?
NFL. What better way to kick off the playoffs than that freaking game that we just watched? Could you imagine? They couldn't set that up any better. Like, this is like March Madness, first round March Madness craziness that we just saw. They definitely won with the quality of that football game.
Absolutely. So, thank you guys so much. The chat was awesome tonight. You guys were fantastic jumping in there with us. Really, really good commentary. Stay with us all week. We don't know who our guest is going to be this week because we don't know who we're playing yet. So, again, another quick reminder, if the Cleveland Browns upset the Pittsburgh Steelers, we will play the winner of Tennessee-Baltimore. If Pittsburgh wins against Cleveland, we play them no matter what. So, I certainly will be rooting for the Steelers. I feel bad. I have a lot of Browns fans in my life. I will be rooting for the Steelers because that's what's in the best interest of my boys, and that's what I'm going to be rolling with. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Black and yellow, black and yellow. Let's go.
Let's go. Hey, this is what it's all about now. This is a new life for us. This is a new experience for us. We're not used to this. So when any fan on Twitter or social media anywhere tries to tell you to act like you've been there before, we can't because we haven't. This is new for us. All right. Thank you guys.
Mafia, real quick, where did I get this Mafia shirt from? One of our sponsors this year, T-Shirt University. I was actually with Greg when I bought this one. Yeah. Got this as a 26 shirts. They sell some of their stuff over there at T-Shirt University. Check them out. I was rocking it. My entire family wore these today. We did a Buffalo story, and all of us wore those today. Loved it. You saw Del Reed and so many of the others on the pregame show talking about Mafia means family. We did that photo shoot today for our family. So check them out at 26 Shirts over at T-Shirt University. Great people in both spots. Yeah. All right. Well, on behalf of Uncle Jumbo's, and thank you to West Herr, you have been listening to Aaron Quinn and Greg Tompsett. This has been Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.